My name is Rick Amsterdam. Peggy invited me down here to speak to you guys, and I specifically asked for this day because it's Agent Orange Awareness Day, and this is an area that I'm pretty knowledgeable in, so I'd like to speak to you guys. It's very important for this story to continue with Vietnam veterans, their children, their wives, and their grandchildren, because this is never ending. This story does not end. So I'd like to fill you guys in and share the knowledge that I have with it. I served in the Army from 1969 through 1972. I landed in Vietnam first week of April 1970, and left sometime in April, I don't remember exactly, in 71. Then that's when I got back. And for all of us, I don't know anybody who said they came home. All of us always say we came back because of the way we were treated. We never say we came home. This is home. This is home. But we did not come home. And with Agent Orange, there's a long story, and I'm going to kind of go over a timeline with you and fill in between. And it's personal for all of us, literally for all of us. And are you guys, Vietnam brothers here, all you guys more than likely have Agent Orange related issues? Yep. You guys? Yep. Yep. Most of us will absolutely have that. In late 70s, we began claiming Agent Orange related illnesses. And I'll go over it when I start reading, but this is just real brief. And of course, VA always denied. They always denied. And eventually, in the late 70s, the lawsuit was filed by a guy named Paula. I'll read his name in a few minutes, who said that his illnesses, he believed at the time, were related to Agent Orange. He passed away December of that same year, and his family kept that suit alive. And he did. And that became the Agent Orange lawsuit against Dow, Monsanto, Diamond Shamrock, and maybe 7 other chemical companies that developed Agent Orange. It became a class action lawsuit. And at the time, it was the largest class action lawsuit in United States history. There were about anywhere, it's still unknown, between 105 and 150,000 of us on that lawsuit. I was a participant on that lawsuit. And I have the paperwork with me. Afterwards, I'll show you guys. I was a participant on that lawsuit. And the way they got my name was, back then what they did was, they actually went through the VA healthcare system. And if you were in there, in the VA healthcare system, and you had illnesses or you had problems you said were related to your service in Vietnam, and you thought it was from the chemicals being used, what they would do, then they would contact you. That's how they contacted me. And it wasn't the VA who contacted me. It was the lawyers out of the Eastern District Court of New York. That's where our class action lawsuit began. And they're the ones who got my name from the VA. Now the VA, when they sent out little postcards to all of us who were asking to be part of this lawsuit, you actually had to go into the VA, pretty much like you do now. It was a little bit more strict back then. So you had to go to your local VA hospital where doctors would examine you. And back then, it was really strict. So in order for them to say you are confirmed that you were in an area known to be sprayed with Agent Orange, it was really tough stipulations. You had to prove when you were there and where you were when you were there. Because back then, in the late 70s, there was only a few regions in Vietnam where they said, yeah, we admit that this area was sprayed, and that area was sprayed. So when I went in at the time I lived in New York in Brooklyn, and I went to the Brooklyn VA, and it was for this Agent Orange to be confirmed as an Agent Orange veteran. And they like, nobody that had come through, and this was again mid to late 70s, had been confirmed. So I went in to see the doctors. They do all tests, with guinea pigs. They do all tests on you. And then came the questions with, where were you? Okay, so I told them where I was. I was on a mountain called Nui Ba Den in 3 Corps. next to Cambodia. And I said, no, I was sprayed with Agent Orange. Just told them where I was, the year I was there, and I was sprayed. So the doctor said, yeah, we don't have anybody yet that's confirmed. So piece of paper, he looks through it, and the doctor looks, he shows the nurse, shows him again. It was like I was in a freak show and I was the freak, because he starts getting real excited. Oh my God, you're confirmed. Oh my God, you're confirmed. I was literally the first veteran in Brooklyn VA to be confirmed as an area being known as sprayed with Agent Orange. So, and then what made it worse, was bad enough that he was so excited, was he called in other doctors and nurses to come in to meet me. Like, you know, like, no, I'm not, you know, what are you doing this for? Because I was the first and they never had anybody and they all wanted to meet somebody. So I was that freak in that freak show. But then to move forward with the lawsuit, you had to have claimed one of the diseases associated with Agent Orange at that time. There were only 3 back then. There was chloracne, lymphoma, and and sarcoma, stomach sarcomas. So I didn't have, you know, I thought I had the chloracne because I was released with 10% out of the military disability. And we were going back and forth with this, but they kept saying no. But everybody was no. No matter who you were, it was no. It was no. So that's how the courts got in touch with me. And then they sent me paperwork and asked if I wanted to be part of that Agent Orange lawsuit. And I said yes. So I was included in that. Now there was between maybe 105 and 150,000 of us on that lawsuit. Out of all of us, out of 3 million, that's how many were on this lawsuit. That's it. So, and it took a long time. It's dragged out for years and years and years. And then finally, in 1984, the case was settled. Late 84, 85, the case was settled. And we won the largest class action lawsuit in United States history at the time, $180 million. That's how much we won. That's no joke back then in the 70s, $180 million. It took several years for that to be dispersed. By the time it was dispersed, that number is also disputed. We know it grew up to about roughly maybe 240 because it took years and years to disperse it, to disperse that money. Now, okay, now I'm looking at these settlements. I'm like, wow, I guess I'm going to be okay. I won't have to worry about anything, you know. But here's how they dispersed it. In order to receive any money, you had to have been 100% P&T, permanent and total, disabled through the VA with one of those 3 known diseases associated with Agent Orange. Damn, I didn't meet that criteria, you know. Or you had to have been dead and the spouse could collect money from one of those 3 diseases associated with Agent Orange. So when I got my, they sent me a postcard with my payout, and it was 0. Mine was 0. I qualified for 2 of the 3 back then, but I didn't qualify on the 3rd. I wasn't dead, I was alive. So I didn't qualify. So I did, that's my brother laughing, so he knows. You know, so I didn't qualify. So I didn't get anything. But I thought, you know what, that's okay. At least all the other guys and the other families, those families are going to be cared for, you know. That's the way I looked at it. But then the actual numbers came out. So out of all those numbers, and all the guys, between 105 and 150,000 on our lawsuit, there was about 35,000, roughly to 50, but it's more likely 35,000 that did receive compensation from the VA. Okay, well, 35,000, those families will be okay, you know. Does anybody have any clue as to how much those families got? And they were all from guys that were dead, that died from Agent Orange. It's disgusting. It's an actual disgrace. So the families, at those 35,000 families, they received a lump sum. The guys that were alive received a lump sum of $3,800. Imagine that, $3,800. The spouses of the veterans who died, they received $12,000 over a course of 10 years. That was the settlement. The rest of the money went to, where does money always go? It goes to the lawyers, and they gave $72 million of our settlement to nonprofits, veterans groups, mostly veterans groups, all of, VFW, DAV, VVA had started up at that time, and the American Legion. So they got a lot of that money. And as long as they, with the understanding that they would help veterans, Vietnam veterans, put in claims for disability. So in the end, that's how our lawsuit ended, which I'll go over a little bit more in detail. And what they did was a crazy clause in there, because after we won our case, it was national. This was national. We won the largest class action in the United States history. Now everybody, all Vietnam veterans, are really well aware of this suit, and the families of deceased and disabled guys, now they wanted to sue. We sued major chemical companies and won. We had a clause in our that we had to sign off to get this money, which was all chemical companies were allowed to deny it was their fault, so they were allowed to deny, and no other Vietnam veteran could ever sue them again. So that's the way our case ended. So after our case ended, of course, there were other suits that moved forward. Literally every single one was thrown out because we had that clause, an airtight clause, smart lawyers on their part, that prevented any of us from ever suing again. So that's kind of like the rundown real quick on that, but I'd like to go over, if you will, the little history on this. And I got to read from my book, so you got to excuse me as I kind of read and go over things with you guys. I'm going to leave this picture up here for now. So this is I was on a mountaintop called Nui Ba Den. I was in the United States Army, so I was a radio guy. So as a radio guy up on a mountain, I'm calling in artillery strikes, air strikes, ambush, counter-ambush, enemy troop movement, and arc light strikes. You guys know arc light strikes for young guys. Those are B-52 strikes. We call them arc light strikes. So if B-52s were coming in and you're out there, and if Bill's out there and he's humping the bush, anywhere maybe 5 miles, 10 miles within that, you get out of that area because it's going to literally take you off the ground. Those B-52s are no joke. It'll pop you out. So, we get them out of that area. So that's what we did. This is my bunker line looking down from the top of the mountain. So what I did was we worked 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's what we had to do. It was me. I was with the 23rd Artillery. Me and one other guy, and we were both radio guys. So we were sent up to the mountain, and with us were 125 guys, greatest guys ever, from the 25th Infantry. So all 25th Infantry, 22 bunkers, and I'm kind of like in the middle on the top with an antenna with my radio. That's the way it looked up there. So if there were 3 of us, once in a while we were fortunate, there would be a 3rd guy up there, and we'd work 8 hours on the radio, and then I'd do 8 hours in a bunker, and then go catch a little sleep, which we didn't do. We'd just go to another bunker, or we had 4 mortar pits, or I'd go to the mortar pit and help those guys. We were all real tight. Usually it was 2 of us, so we'd do 12 hours on the radio, and I'm not talking about like hanging around waiting for something to happen. You're nonstop. It's nonstop. The artillery strikes don't stop, air strikes don't stop, ambush, counter-ambush, enemy troop movement never stops. So you're just non-stop on that radio. And I'm calling up like 5 artillery batteries at once. 5 different artillery batteries from different areas all around Tay Ninh area to provide these artillery strikes to help our guys. So it just never stops. And then after my 12 hours, if there were 2 of us, then I'd go into the bunker and hang out with my friends in a bunker. And usually I'd either man the grenade, the 79, grenade launcher, or the 60, the machine gun. And then I'd go into the mortar pit, and maybe we'd all catch maybe 4 hours. We're 19 years old, You could do 4 hours sleep easy, real easy to do. So looking down from my bunker, I had a camera, and I sent this picture to my mom, actually. So it's one of the few letters that my mother still had. And it was the pictures that I took from my bunker looking down. I said, Ma, this is like a week after they sprayed. And I said, and we didn't know the name of it. I said, they sprayed like weed killer. And I said, the reason why I took the picture was because everything looked gray. So I don't know if any of you guys ever saw like afterwards looking down like in a jungle, because back here you could see the jungle, and this is looking down from the top of the mountain. It was eerie. I mean, everything was gray. I'm like, Mom, this looks so weird. It looks like a gray petrified forest. That's the reason, the only reason why I sent that picture home. And I'm glad I did, because, you know, she still had it. But that's the whole top of the mountain was just like that. And let's see if I can get to the other. And this is the mountain that I was on. It was called Nui Ba Den, also known as the Black Virgin Mountain. It was 3,800 feet high. So here's us, like way up here, right? And you can't really make out, but this would be the bunker line. We had 22 bunkers around, like I said, 4 mortar pits. And the whole mountain, the whole middle of the mountain was all enemy. So they had tunnels and caves in there. You could never get them out, you know, never ever. So what we would do, guys from the bottom would sweep the bottom of the mountain, and we would be responsible. We would sweep the top of the mountain. But the enemy was all in here in tunnels and caves, and they were there forever. When we were sweeping one day, went into a cave, and we found a 500-bed hospital in the mountain. You could literally drive a deuce and a half through this whole thing, you know. We took captured weapons. I have pictures. No, I don't know. I don't think I brought the captured weapons picture with me. But we took them out, and we had choppers come and take them down to Tay Ninh. And that was a big deal. Everybody was taking pictures. There were tons and tons of all kinds of captured weapons. So what they used to do, which was really, we used to laugh. Now, you know, we used to laugh back then. Now it's pretty nuts. So they would come out, let's say, up here, and they would shoot mortars and rockets at us every day. And we were a free fire zone, by the way, 24/7 free fire zone. So for those who don't know what that is, so now rules of engagement. Rules of engagement is you got to call, you get fired on, you got to call, hey, listen, I have contact with the enemy. I need permission to engage. We didn't have that. We were ordered just anything moves, you just destroy it. 24/7. No rules of engagement, you engage because of where we are. The only people that are going to be there are people that shouldn't be there. So we had no rules of engagement. So they would come up here and fire rockets at us, and we used to laugh because most of the time, let's say over 90% of the time, those rockets used to go like this and come down on the other side, and they'd kill each other, you know. So it was really weird, you know. It was kind of really strange, but that's the way life was, you know. And mortars would work, and we dealt with mostly sappers, you know. So my Vietnam veterans know what sappers are. Sappers, guys, the young guys, are picture modern-day terrorists, right? Like a modern-day terrorist. So they would have explosives and satchel charges with them, and they would come through our bunker line, and they would sneak up, come through, and they're after one thing. They're after me. Why? Because I have the radio, right? So the radio is super important for your younger guys, because without communication, without a radio, you have no communication. Without communication, you're dead. The enemy could come in and just fully attack you. You can't call out for help. We couldn't get artillery up here anyway. It was just too dangerous, you know. I took around a forward observer one time up there, and this guy was good. Oh man, he was good. So I was walking around because I had seniority up there at the time. I was there for a long time. And I knew every inch of the top of that mountain. So he was up there to see how close artillery could come without getting us. And so we would be up there, and I'd lay back. You know, he's doing his thing. I'm just protecting him, so I'm just watching. And he was calling in artillery strikes like from here. He was gotten as close as the parking lot. This guy was good, you know. But not for us. He would never do it for us. It was just too dangerous. So we would rely on each other. We were in a permanent defensive position, and that's life. You know, everybody that was in Vietnam has a different story. That was our life, you know. But Agent Orange was constantly, you know, they were spraying a little bit more to expand our perimeter. So we had a good 100 yards. So from my bunker, I can see down. Let's see if I can go back. I can go down, and I could see right through this 100 yards before the tree line actually is trees with greenery. Everything's there, trees are there, shrubs are there, but there's not a leaf on it. Nothing. Tactical advantage. That's what we worked with, the tactical advantage. That's the whole reason for Agent Orange to begin with, the spraying. It was done originally for the river brownwater guys. So brownwater guys are your Army, Navy guys that would patrol the inner waterways of Vietnam. So the enemy, let's say this area right here is river, jungle, jungle, right? Jungle literally come up to the bank of that little river, and they'd just blow the hell out of us. We couldn't see them. They're in the jungle, you know. So they started spraying. They said, okay, the chemical companies had the answer. If we spray, we can give you guys a 100-yard advantage. So now when your boats are going through the waterways, you can actually see if the enemy is there. And that's what started it in there. And I'm gonna read a little bit for you guys, if you don't mind. Reading glasses. So when did it start? In the 1940s, defoliants were developed to clear railroad tracks in America. That's how it actually all started, guys. 1962, JFK authorizes Operation Ranch Hand in Vietnam. That's when JFK said, okay, we can start beginning spraying in specific areas that are known to have, you know, where combat operations are taking place. So it was pretty restricted back then. Over 19.2 million gallons of Agent Orange is sprayed in Vietnam. That's a lot, guys. 19 million gallons. 50% of all defoliants was Agent Orange. So there were different agents. There was, like Peggy has right here, right? You have Agent Green, pink, purple, blue, I can't even read, Agent White, and there were 3 Agent Oranges. There was Agent Orange 1, 2, and 3. So Agent Orange was sprayed from 62 right through 1970, the end of 1970. That's how long it was going on. Agent Orange refers to specific mixtures of herbicides, primarily for containing the chemicals 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T. What that basically means is, guys, those are toxic dioxins that were mixed in with these defoliants. That's what's in our bodies. So what happens with that is, nowadays we know now that that stuff is ingested into our muscles, into our fat, and it's in our DNA. It's never coming out of our DNA. And our private research shows that it is 7 generations deep. What does that mean, 7 generations deep? That means we pass it on to a minimum of 7 generations. So that means I could pass it on to my children, they could pass it on to their children, and their children, and their children, and their children. So right now our private research shows 7 generations deep. What is it really? We'll never know. We won't be here to find out the truth, you know. It's not. It's in our DNA, and it could skip. You know, it could skip. So if any of you have any disabled children or grandchildren, and it's not in your family medical history, where'd that come from? Where'd it come from? I don't know. Guess what, guys? There's a good chance it's from Agent Orange. It's in your DNA. So our research shows 50%, likely 50%. So what does that mean? I have 4 kids. 2 out of the 4 have kidney disease. 2 years ago, my son had a transplant. Or he wouldn't be here right now. One of my sons. So 2 of my sons have kidney disease. That's kind of weird, but it does hit that 50%. I have 2 grandchildren. One of them is autistic with severe learning disabilities. 50% again. So those numbers are pretty much dead on. Now, can it skip? Yeah, not everybody, but it is in our DNA. So maybe it'll skip. Maybe you won't have any issues. Maybe your children and grandchildren will not have any issues. That doesn't mean it's not going to appear. What happens if it appears 6 generations down the road? We're gone. We're gone a long time. And your family's going to say, where did this come from? It's not in our family history. It's up to all of us to make sure that it is known, written, and passed down to your children or grandchildren. That's hard to do. Hey, this is a possibility. You need to look out for that. So now, when I talk to people, and this is kind of hitting home, and you say like, okay, it's for us, you know, when you pass, everybody says R.I.P., rest in peace, rest in peace. How can we ever rest in peace? How can I ever rest in peace knowing that your children and grandchildren, 7 generations deep, could have massive physical and mental disabilities? Why? Just because we served in Vietnam. There's no other explanation. That's why we can't rest in peace. I know, how can you? You know, you think, oh, I'm finally dead, I can finally rest. No, man, we all died in that war. We were just too stupid to lay down, you know. But that's some other things to think about when it comes to AO, and I'll refer to it as AO. So Agent Blue was used as the defoliant. It contained cacalide and acid. It was an acid form of arsenic. It was used to destroy crops and vegetation. It was so toxic that it was replaced by Agent Orange 1, 2, and 3. They pulled Agent Blue. Agent Purple was a combination of Agents Blue and White used for defoliation. Agent Purple, combination of agents Blue and White used for defoliation. Pink used for destruction, and it contained arsenics. Over 7,700 square miles were used with AO and other agents. And another just simple thing, guys, what was the average age of us when we were there? 19. We're kids, 19 years old. But for a 19-year-old, oh man, 19 years old and you could play with the best weapons in the world, you know? Man, that was pretty cool. I remember playing with C4 up on that mountain. It was like, holy crap. And we used it to heat our food. So I don't know if you other guys did or not, you know. I'm pretty sure you did, you know. So when I got up there, my friends, when I first got up there, you know, we were eating sea rats. We don't have hot food. We got sea rats for the whole year. And they watch me and they say, oh, welcome up here. And I open up the can. It's dog food. You know, it's like with this layer of congealed fat on top. I'm like, oh, man. And you start eating this stuff, and they're laughing their ass off. They are just hysterical, laughing at me as eating this. And they said, that's it. You know, you got your choice. And up on the mountain, they picked through it on the bottom before they sent it up. So we only got like the real crappy stuff. You know, like we didn't get SpaghettiOs, you know, that other stuff. We just got the canned, they called it meat, you know, whatever it was. And he knows. So my friend showed me, all right, now we're going to show you how to a better meal. So we had so much unlimited C4 up there. So I said, just take this, you cut off a piece of C4 the size of a nickel, and you put a match to it. It burned at like 2,000 degrees. So you just put it on top of your sea rat. It burned out to an ash in about 3 or 4 seconds. Just blow off the ash, open it up. Now you have boiling hot dog food instead of cold dog food. So, you know, it made a difference. It did, it made a difference. But these are things that, you know, people aren't aware of, like everyday conditions, you know. And now I could laugh now, it's humorous. At the time, it's just like, oh, it was disgusting. It really was disgusting. It really was. It was horrible. As of 2015, guys, 300,000 Vietnam vets died from Agent Orange exposure. That's from the VA itself. That report came from the North Dakota. If you guys look it up, North Dakota VA report 2015, it will show you that report. Later that year, HIPAA laws are passed. Nobody can get those numbers anymore, HIPAA laws. But we do know in 2015, over 300,000 of us died from Agent Orange exposure. 10 years later, God only knows what that number is. You know, actual boots on the ground in Vietnam, somewhere between 2.8 and 3.2 million of us were there. They do not have exact numbers. MACV was assigned to keeping those numbers. They didn't. It's just a guess. You know, maybe 11 million of us served during the Vietnam era. Boots on the ground, 2.8, 3.2 million over the years. Those are the actual numbers. In 2008 to 2017, over 60,000 veterans have committed suicide. In 2017, again, these are older numbers, guys. 2007, by 2017, in 2017, take it back, 6,139 committed suicide. Over 50,000 Vietnam veterans have committed suicide. Vietnam veterans have the highest rate of suicide. And guys, everybody should know this, and I'm guessing everybody does know this. How many veterans commit suicide a day? Guys, how many? You guys know this answer, right?
17.
A little higher, between 18 to 22. It's usually 22, 21, 22. So when I would go around, I used to do tours for school children a lot. I used to work at the Vietnam Veteran Memorial, and we'd get like 10,000 school kids through there a year. And I would really ask those kids, the high school kids and all the other kids, if you see a veteran, go up to them, thank them for their service. If you see a Vietnam veteran, you say, welcome home, because we were never welcomed home. Now, why would that be important? And the kids would say, you know, okay, but why? You know, it's important, but why? And I'd say, just think about this, guys. What if that guy was one of those 22 that day? He was going to commit suicide. Maybe, just maybe, by you going up and say, thank you for your service. I appreciate you. Maybe that number would go down to 21. And then maybe somebody would meet another guy. Maybe the number would go down to 20. Wouldn't that be great, you know? Get those numbers down there. So that's the important, simple thing for kids. Walk up to a veteran and say, thank you for your service. I appreciate you. Big world of difference. That guy could be in a world of hurt that day in his head, you know, and that could save his life. Yeah. So I talked about 1977, the VA begins claims saying health issues are related to Agent Orange. Every single claim was denied. Every claim was denied, unless you could prove your condition began while you were still in the military. 1978, Army veteran Paul Rudishan sued Dow for $10 million. He said his condition, his health condition at the time, his stomach sarcoma, was due to Agent Orange. He died that same year. And his words was what we always say to this day was, I died in Vietnam, I just didn't know it. But his family and his lawyers did not let it die with him. They are the ones who started that lawsuit forward. They're the ones who began that class action lawsuit against, there was only 3 at the time. They started that suit against Dow, Monsanto, and Diamond Shamrock. And I'm not sure if you're aware, Agent Orange was made here in New Jersey. You know, we are one of the places, you know. So if you ever go on a train to the city, I think it's up around Patterson. When you look over the river, or Passaic, when you're looking over the river, you see concrete barriers there. And if you look, everything's brown. It's been that way since the 70s. They produced Agent Orange right there. So if you ever take a train to the city and you go in there and you look over, yep, that's where it was made. That's one of the places where it was made. When we had our lawsuit, the U.S. government asserted power preventing anybody from suing the government. So we could sue the chemical companies, but much like today, you cannot sue the government. They are exempt. So in 1980, the lawsuit moved forward. The claimants are Vietnam veterans, families, and their children. Children claims assert genetic injury and birth defects caused by the Vietnam veteran parent. The wives sue for miscarriages and illnesses from their husbands. And the children were having disability problems. They had disability problems. The children and wives' claims were all denied. Right now, all claims for children are denied for men, with the exception of one, spina bifida in children. And that goes right after they allowed those 3 diseases in the beginning of our lawsuit. Once Congress forced the VA to begin to care for us. Spina bifida to this day is the only disability for children of male Vietnam veterans. Female Vietnam veterans, different story. Female Vietnam veterans, they have quite a few diseases associated with Agent Orange. And currently right now, there is a fascinating case going on right now in Connecticut. And I have information for anybody who wants this, about this case and everything I'm talking about. There's a female in Connecticut, her dad, Vietnam veteran, so she has, there's a technical word, but she has dwarfism, right? She's tiny. Now, dwarfism is a medical condition, a disability, if you were a female Vietnam veteran. As a male Vietnam veteran, they deny. They say, no, it's not from being a Vietnam veteran's daughter because your dad was a veteran, and we only allow that for females. Yale lawyer took her case up and said, nope, that's discrimination. How can you say that that dwarfism is strictly for a female and not for a male? The reason why this case is so important, and you can follow it. You go on Google, you just type in female daughter of Vietnam veteran suing for, over Agent Orange. Boom, that story is going to pop up. It's everywhere. The reason why that's so important, if she wins her case, guys, that opens the door for all of us, for our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and so on down the road. Because that little crack, once that crack is established, that opens the door for us. And I think she's got a great case. Because why it wasn't done so many years ago, I don't know. You know, why should it just be for a female Vietnam veteran? That's genetic. We know now it's in our genetic. So those toxic dioxins, they're in our genes, and they're there forever, and they're being passed down through our reproductive systems. Why should it be just for women and not just? It's kind of weird. It's usually the reverse, but in this case, she's suing, saying that it should be for men as well. So when she wins, hopefully we're around to see it, this is huge for male Vietnam veterans. Huge case that's going on. And it's kind of silent. No one's picking up on it. As soon as I read about it, I'm following this case by the day, you know. So, I told you about the stories with the VA when I went to the Brooklyn VA. May 7, 1984, the suit is finally settled. Out of the court with 7 chemical companies. The deal stating all chemical companies, though, there's a clause in there, they're not responsible. So they settled with us. We win the largest class action lawsuit at the time, like I said, $180 million. But there's a clause in there saying they're not responsible. What that does is it prevents any future Vietnam veteran from suing them again. So that's their out. That's the way they get out of that. So, as I said, it was as follows: 100% P&T, you got $12,000 paid over 10 years. Widows of Vietnam veterans who died from one of those 3 conditions, $3,700. By accepting this settlement, this was horrible too. So, for some of the women in here, if you were part of that suit and you got your settlement, right, you got your $3,700, you had to sign off saying that you would not be eligible for food stamps. You would not be eligible for public assistance or government assistance of any kind. How in the world are you going to survive? If your husband, more than likely back then, your husband was working, he got sick, he dies, you have kids, how are you going to survive? The only way you can survive in the beginning is you go for public assistance. You go for food stamps, you go for housing assistance. You had to sign off saying, nope, you can and never will have that public assistance. You can't. It's part of your agreement. So what they did to us was insane. $74 million of our suit goes to lawyers, 83 nonprofit social service programs, and veterans organizations. All court fees came out of our settlement. 1991, Congress enacts the Agent Orange Act, allowing VA to declare certain conditions presumptive. The 3 conditions I was talking about when I went to the VA, these are the 3 conditions you had to have had. Either chloracne, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, or soft tissue sarcoma. By 1993, VA compensated only 486 victims, even though it had received 39,000 claims at the time. 1996, Agent Orange Benefit Act allows benefits for children of Vietnam veterans with spina bifida. That didn't come out until 1996. The Agent Act of 2026, 19 diseases are now associated with Agent Orange. Now, that's kind of like our story, boots on the ground in Vietnam. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to tell you something that's just mind-blowing, insane. What about the blue water guys? So brown water guys are the Army and Navy guys who patrolled the inner waterways. They were compensated. What about the Navy guys? You know, the ships off the coast of Vietnam where we got our support from? What about them? They had the same diseases as us. They suffer the same as we do. Every single claim was denied by the VA. It was not until 2019, January 2019, that Congress stepped in and Congress forced the VA to care for blue water veterans. Most of the guys were Navy guys. And they said, wait a second, you got to care for them. So the VA's contention all these years, VSO back there, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The VSO's contention was this. You guys were out in the water, you were on Navy ships, you guys had desalinization plants that purified your water, you never had boots in the ground, therefore you were not exposed to Agent Orange, therefore you are not allowed to get compensation for you or your family. That was their contention. Our private research proved beyond a doubt that, okay, that part is true. However, the desalinization plants did purify the water. It did not take out the toxic dioxins that were in that water. So the VA said, well, it's impossible. Those guys were out in the ocean. They were offshore. They never got access to that water. And here's how they did. So when Agent Orange is sprayed throughout those years in Vietnam from 62 through 71, what happens? So it comes down as a fine mist. Kind of like you ever go out on a day where it's like misty, not raining, but you know, you're wet, you know. So Agent Orange comes down, goes on the trees, it lands on the ground. What does Vietnam have a lot of? Rain, right? Monsoon seasons. What happens to the AO, the Agent Orange and these different agents? Goes into the ground. After it rains, it goes into the ground. It makes its way into the groundwater. That groundwater goes into little small streams that works its way into the tributaries, and it funnels out into the Gulf of China, the South China Sea. That filters out into the ocean. That's how those guys were exposed. Those desalinization plants, yes, it purified the water, did not take the toxic dioxins out. Those guys ate, drank, and bathed in those waters just like we did. No difference. Finally, the proof was so outstanding that Congress forced the VA to care for those guys. And I'm going to give you an example. So my brother and I, where we grew up, a lot of small homes in our area. Up the street was a friend of ours, the Hendricksons. A lot of kids, there were like 11 kids in that family. Carl was 2 years older than me, so he's 5 years older than my brother. Carl marries a local girl, Fran, from the neighborhood. He goes in the Navy. He's off the coast of Vietnam. He comes back from Vietnam, and he starts getting sick. He goes to the VA for help. He's in the VA healthcare system, but he can't get compensated. They say, you're a Navy guy, you're a blue water guy. You were never exposed to Agent Orange. And he'd say, but I have the same diseases that you're allowing. And every time a new disease would come out on our registry, he had it. He had so many things wrong with him. They kept saying no, 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 no. Carl has 7 kids with Fran. Carl dies, I think around 2013, Carl dies. I spoke with his wife last year, Fran, and she told me the story. So she said, Rick, she said, when she told me the whole thing, she said, Carl died. She said, I have 7 kids. I did not get compensated. I had to go on welfare and get put in Section 8 housing and live off government assistance. And she said, it wasn't until 2019 when the VA forced, when the Congress forced the VA rather, to care for these people. She said, I got a back check that would knock your socks off because they had to go retro. Doesn't bring her husband back. She has 7 kids. 7 out of 7 are severely disabled. 7 out of 7. they're so disabled that she has to put them in homes during the day. They will not care for the kids. Why? Again, male Vietnam veterans, only spina bifida. So yes, she got a nice check. Yes, she will be comfortable, but all the money she got will end up going to care for her children, you know, over these years. This is what happened to us. This is real deal life experiences, guy. All of this is still happening to this day. So for us, what's the lessons that we learned? It's mainly now to keep your family informed. Make sure that you're enrolled in the VA healthcare system. Every one of us should be at 100% P&T. If you're not, see this gentleman in a blue shirt back there? He is a VSO from your area. I live up kind of in the Toms River area, up that way, LBI area. He is right here. He is local. Hopefully he will help you get the benefits that you earned. You don't deserve anything. You earned it. And there's a huge difference between deserving and earning. And we all earned it, you know. So these are important things for you guys to know. Watch your children. Watch your grandchildren. Let them know. Agent Orange is not going away for us. It is like the biggest and most important reminder and takeaway from the war, if you will. You know, what is our takeaway? Yeah, it was kind of messed up. Yeah, we were 19 years old. Yeah, we saw and did things that no 19-year-old or 20-year-old should ever see or do in our life. Horrible things. But those we put in a rear view mirror when we came back, you know, and they're behind us. It never goes away. Our war doesn't end. Every one of us knows that here. Peggy knows this. We know it. You know it. I know it. It doesn't go away. So, yeah, I don't speak about the war much. Maybe a couple of times a year. I'll speak. I used to speak with school children. I'll still do it. And veterans organizations. And I thought this was a real good opportunity to speak to you guys and answer your questions. And a couple other things. So, anybody here, have anybody ever applied for the Orange Medal? Let me show you what it is. It's called an Orange Medal. VSO, do you inform you guys about this? No. Isn't this, well, so it's an orange medal that they came out with for those of us exposed to Agent Orange. It's an orange ribbon, basically, you know. In order to be eligible, you have to fill out a form, which I have here for anybody who wants it. But the eligibility requirements, they're pretty strong. To be eligible, you have to have one of the 19 diseases associated with Agent Orange. Some of these words I cannot even pronounce. Amyloidosis, porphyria cortona, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Hodgkin's disease, chronic B-cell leukemia, prostate cancer, Parkinson's disease, ischemic heart disease, which probably several of you do have, peripheral neuropathy, I'm guessing just about all of us, respiratory cancers, diabetes type 2, multiple myeloma, chloracne soft tissue sarcomas, hypothyroidism, Parkinsonism, bladder cancer, hypertension, and the newest one, mitochondrial gammopathy. If any of you, I know it's a long stretch here, but if you do have one of these diseases associated with Agent Orange, put in the paperwork, which I have here, and they will send this to you. It is not formal. It is not a recognized formal medal, guys. It is something, it's an afterthought. I think it's more or less a kind gesture, you know, that you can apply for this. And I did, and mine was sent. I can't find the letter it came with or the certificate, whatever it came with. I know, I might have gotten angry and tore it up like I did with the Agent Orange lawsuit settlement. But it's something that I keep. I'm like, you know what? It's a good thing to have. Most of my friends did receive it after they sent in the paperwork, you know, because I think every one of us will be okay with that. You know, that you'll have the evidence you need to secure that. And the other thing is that we have here, I'm not sure if Peggy have ever had here, VSO may be aware of it as well, and I do have the forms here with me, guys. So as New Jersey residents, you are also entitled to 2 medals, which are recognized. New Jersey Distinguished Service Medal, and the other one, I don't remember, I got it here somewhere. There's another one, New Jersey, I've got the other one. There's 2 medals from New Jersey. They will send them with nice certificates for you guys. And being a New Jersey resident, as long as you're a New Jersey resident for 10 years, you would receive those medals, you know. For me, I don't know, probably like you guys, when I got home, it was not good for any of us that I know of. So we kind of discarded just about everything, you know, that we had and didn't want anything to do with the VA. I got involved with it because I started getting sick. So, and then when I went to the VA, they were pretty strict, but once I was confirmed with Agent Orange, I receive, I think now it's probably twice a year, Agent Orange newsletters. So I don't know if any of you are on the registry. So you go on the Agent Orange registry and you get the newsletters. I've gotten them from the very beginning. As soon as this came out, I was on that registry. Another important thing to do, which I'll have here as well. Every one of you, Vietnam veteran, man or woman, put your names on the Vietnam Veterans National Birth Defect Registry. Do it. Put your kids' names on there. You leave a paper trail that way. My kids are on it. All 4 of my kids are on it. My grandchildren are on it. It's just a simple matter of going on form, filling out forms, going online, filling out. It's called the National Vietnam, but there's different registries. Ours is Vietnam Veterans National Birth Defect Registry. So that if your kids are okay, but what about their kids? What about their kids? What about their kids? Right? So what we're doing is we're thinking for the future for our families. Right? It's a very, very important. And all of you should be on the Agent Orange registry as well. So the Agent Orange registry, what they do is they kind of keep you informed bi-yearly. They'll send you a nice newsletter. Let's see if I have one here. And it keeps you update with the latest and greatest. I thought I had it. I may not, or I may have it. It will tell you, it will keep everybody informed what's the latest and greatest with diseases associated with Agent Orange, or if the VA is about to add more to it. You know, believe it or not, women Vietnam veterans, they have more diseases associated with Agent Orange than men, you know. And again, that's how the VA calculates things is just beyond me, you know. Social Security is pretty simple. You're either disabled or you're not. And your VA knows, VSO guy over there knows, I know a pretty lot too, but he knows better than me how weird it is where you can be service connected and get 0 compensation. One of my friends was a helicopter pilot. Insertion, every single day insertions, he was rated 0% disabled. What are you talking about? You're 0, you were a chopper pilot. So I talked him into going to the VA. I think he's still only up to 70 or 80%, which blows my mind. Wait a second, you're a chopper pilot. How the hell are you only 70%? Well, you could be 0%, 10%, 20%, 30%, all the way up, combined at 10% or combined, right? Or combined at 30%. So you may have 3 different issues, and they're going to say, well, their math, I don't know where they learn their math from, but their math says, okay, well, that one's 20%, or this one's 30%, and that one's 10%, but combined it's 30%. What the hell are you talking about, you know? And it's very confusing, but that's where guys like your VSO can explain it. You know, he'll explain the whys and the ways around that. But every Vietnam veteran here, you should all be at 100%. Every one of you should be at 100%, you know? I've been at that level for over 20 years. You know, over 20 years. I think I was at 60 for, I don't know, 15, 20 years at that as well, you know. It's fight. And I did everything on my own without a VSO. So at the time, very intimidating, guys. Back then it was 26 pages. You open up the page, you start filling out a form for disability, and it's asking you for specifics. Where was the battle? What date was the battle? When did you get injured? Do you have witnesses for this battle? Close it up. rip it up, throw it away. Basically, that's what we did, right? You need to take your time with these forms. Now I think it's 13 pages, something like that, right? Yeah, everything's like, I think they knocked it in half, so it's like 13 pages now. So what I used to do, I used to be a VSO for the DAV many years ago, so I would help guys, with this, go through this, and I would tell them, spend an hour on it, close it up, walk away, go back to your life. Next day, spend an hour on it. If you do not know specifics, just take a guess. Put what year. Okay, yeah, I got injured and I don't know the name of that. Who knows? I was in a jungle. I might have been in Cambodia. I don't know, but it was somewhere, I think, somewhere between April and August. It's 50 years ago, guys, that's okay. You just put down your approximates, and your VSO and you and the VA will work it out. You'll work it out. But these guys are your experts. They're the guys that can help you. And I know I'm plugging you a lot, but there's a reason for that. Because all of you guys should be speaking with your VSO about your families and what they would be entitled to. And I got some good information from him as well, because I have another woman that I know pretty well that I used to work with. Her husband passed away probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago, from lymphoma. And it's weird, I was talking to your VSO about this. She gets CHAMP VA, meaning her health care is taken care of. She does not get any DIC, Dependent Indemnity Compensation. And I'd like you to talk about that to these guys, if you don't mind, about DIC. So DIC is for the spouse. So if your husband dies from an Agent Orange related illness and he's 100% P&T, if I'm right, if he's 100% P&T, meaning permanent and total, then you would be entitled to your health care and monetary compensation each month. That's how that works. So with my friend, she gets her health care, but she doesn't get any DIC. She doesn't get any money from the VA. I don't understand that. The VSO is talking, he doesn't understand that. I don't get it, So somewhere someone screwed up the paperwork along the line, because she is entitled, I believe, to that DIC. But it's important for the spouses of Vietnam veterans to stay on top of this, because your husband not. We're not built that way. We just kind of like want to put that stuff behind us. But for the spouse, super, super important, because that's your life. That's your children's life. That's your grandchildren's life. How many of us are caring for our grandchildren now? Because both parents need to work. So many of us have grandchildren. I know I helped raise my grandchildren. What happens if something happens to me? They're done. Like nobody's going to be nice and say, "Oh, I'll take over for you." It's not going to happen, guys. Be realistic here. That's where your DIC would come in, so that the spouse can then at least, she's not going to get a lot of money, but her health care, and she will get something, and the property taxes also. So if you're 100% P&T, your property taxes go away. So as a wife, and that's the other thing, that my friends, she doesn't have to worry about property taxes because her husband was 100% P&T, so she doesn't pay property taxes. So that does help the spouses, guys. Very, very important. And I would like, yeah, Peggy.
Did Agent Orange, when it fell on you, did it have a color?
No. Now, I know like pictures show it as orange. Now it's kind of clear. No, it's like a mist. So and that's another weird thing, the way they used to send it out. It said send it out in like small planes to disperse it, helicopters. So helicopters would fly treetop level. It would kind of be like a heavy mist, depending on, and here's really what it depended on. So they were calibrated. So it was supposed to be 10 to 1. 10 gallons of water, 1 gallon of AO, Agent Orange, right? They would come back when they're done. What did the chopper pilot do and his crew? I want to get this stuff out of here to get back. So they'd just throw it out full strength, instead of cutting it. There were guys on bases who used to walk around like with sprayers, literally hand sprayers, and spray it.
So you felt it?
Yeah, it was all over you. And those guys would say like,
You said you go like this.
yeah, you just, now mind you, if you're in the rear base, if you're in base camp, you're shirtless. None of us wore shirts, right? None of us wore shirts. You're shirtless, and you're going around with a tank sprayer Literally, you're walking around with a tank sprayer or one on your back, and you're spraying, and you're covered in literally AO, but at 100% because those guys knew as soon as I'm done, I can go get a hot meal. So they would just throw full strength into a canister and walk around the base, and they would spray it. Now, I don't have the number. I don't know if Paula does or not. Paula is here too. I know her for a pretty long time. I don't know the numbers, and I apologize to Paula. I don't know the numbers of the Vietnamese casualties from Agent Orange. It is outstanding. So back in the 60s, in the mid-60s, I do know in the beginning, the hospitals in Saigon were experiencing extremely high rates of children being born with disabilities, limbs missing and deformed. That's when suspicions started growing, like, well, wait a second, what's going on here? Why are all these children, why are all these Vietnamese children who were in the areas that was sprayed coming down and being disabled? So the numbers there are outstanding. I have watched, if you ever get a chance to watch any of the AO documentaries on Vietnamese and their struggles, you just have a box of tissues with you because the waterworks, they're going to flow. It's just insane. So we came back with these issues. They live with it every single day. Literally every single day. Yeah.
If you see on television an organization called Operation Smile, they were one of the first organizations started by a Vietnam veteran and a dentist and his wife to go to Vietnam. And it's grown now where they have thousands and thousands of doctors take their vacation, go over, because the cost back 10 years ago was probably a little under $100 to do a surgery for cleft lips, cleft palates. That was one of the biggest things over there. And these doctors would go over and they would do surgery and reconstruct the faces of these children.
And they're still around today. That organization still does that. There was another one that used to go to Vietnam. I don't remember the name of it. They stopped going about 2 years ago. So they used to go up into the Mountain Yard area, and they would go in and help families and help everybody that was associated with Agent Orange problems, and they would go in and help them as well. They stopped going. Their last flight was 2 years ago, but I do believe that they're going to restart. And another thing, guys, have any of you ever been on the honor flight? Yes. Honor flight, honor flight, honor flight, awesome. You guys absolutely sign up for the honor flight. I had the privilege of going this past April out of the South Jersey honor. They leave from Williamstown. We went with 3 buses to DC. Is that where you guys left to? Yeah, that's incredible, right? Oh man, police escort, everybody. There was 3 buses. I guess there was about 110 of us. We had one guy who was he was 102 years old, and he was mobile. He did not need a walker. He did not need anything. He was a World War II guy. So, and what they do is they take you to DC. We went by bus because we're South Jersey. And the guy's name is Ron Pantino and his wife Pam. If you look it up online, South Jersey honor flight, put your name in there. They go twice a year. The next trip is this October. And they take you to DC by bus. You don't do anything. Everybody's got a guardian, right? Everybody's got a guardian. You got your own person there. They are there to walk you through everything. They are there to feed you, give you snacks. They are there to you are the king of the day. Let me tell you something. You get breakfast. All dignitaries come in. You go to DC. You have so much to eat, drink. So I think with us, we went to the World War II monument. We went to the Korean War monument. We went to the wall, of course. That's the toughest. We did go another place. Oh, to Iwo Jima. And we went to Iwo Jima. And surprisingly, when we went in April, it was dead. I expected it to be so many people. But we went at a good time. The kids were still in school. People were working on a weekday. So it was a good time to go, And that you find online. And the guy and his wife, they've been doing it. We happened to be on a 25th honor flight. So it was a really special occasion. When did you guys go? This year? 20th. So that was a big occasion. I was on the 25th. I went this year. Great. Peg deal. I don't know if you ever have any information on that. I'll talk to you about that. It's something that you do, guys. You're allowed to take, if you're not mobile, you can bring a child. You can bring anybody you want, as your guardian. It is incredible. Man, you leave there, right? You leave that school and you see the whole school out there waving flags, you know, and you start crying. And then we passed down, that was the high school, then we went past the middle school. The entire school was in the street. And the town was in the people there waving flags.
Even little kids like that.
That was the next school. That was the third school. Yeah, the third school right before the bridge. There was the elementary school, little tiny kids, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old in the street waving flags and like, oh my, and meanwhile you got a police escort. You're not stopping at any lights, you know what I mean? No, that was incredible. And the same thing coming back. And then when you come back, you know, everybody got swag, right? You got swag when you came back, swag bags. They take a picture of you and your guardian, which I have on in my living room. And you're treated just so well. You know, you really are. So the honor flights are incredible. Paula, did you want to talk a little bit? I know Paula has been here before.
Yeah, I think everybody know about me.
Maybe some don't. Come up for a sec.
As promised, Peggy, can you help me?
Yeah, Paula is incredible. She works a lot with the Vietnamese communities. I think I first met Paula when they come up to the New Jersey Vietnam Veterans Memorial on Black April. That's when I first met her through our friend T. And I'm always in touch with Paula, and she's like a one-woman dynamo, nonstop energy, and she does so much. Go ahead, Paula, please.
Thank you, Rick. Good afternoon. Who wasn't here the last time? I think most people were here last time. You know who I am already. I don't have to go through that. I just want, as promised, these are the flag. I hope it's the right size. So you can please double check before I leave. So this way you like in order. I do have a couple things. Thank you, Rick, for sharing your experience. That's something that new to me. I do hear about Agent Orange, but one of the women whose name was Yuen Wen Hoa, she became communist in 1968, and she and her husband moved to the jungle. Okay, that's all where our enemy hide. Okay, because they know that American would not attack the special places like Nui Ba Den, you know, like it's something like, it's like very special. It's just like you can't attack.
It's a sacred mountain, guys.
Yeah. You can't attack Lady Liberty.
Right.
Okay, so they hide in there, like he mentioned, hospital in there, and that's why they had to use this agent to clear out so that they can see where the enemy were. Okay, that's the message I want to share with you. The second message was the Vietnamese communists did take went to the court in Brooklyn, New York, but lost the case. They lost the case a few years ago. You know, to me, I'm still learning about history, so I didn't dig too deep in it, but I know they lost the case. They didn't win the case. Okay.
Yeah, I followed that case.
And some of the disformed babies, you probably right, but then in some cases because they're malnutrition, because of the war, okay, and because of the mosquito, other kind of disease that in our country, we inherit that in our country, that make babies become disinformed, okay? Like this gentleman mentioned about the kid, that's just because the kids like to suck their thumb, and sometimes the tooth went up, it's, you know, stick through their upper lips, so it's split, right? It's split, so they can't talk properly. So I just want to mention that what I know so far, I'm not totally correct on that 100%, but that's what I learned, that's what I know, okay? Today, I just want to share some good news, although so sad though. I'm sorry I have to share some good news, because I need to brighten up
We want good news.
day a little bit after the hard day. Like last time I already shared you about Mr. Hong Kao, right? You always seen that. He's now is the acting Secretary of Navy, right? Today, I'd like to share with you two more very special young ladies. Young with Anne, she's a bomb lady.
Yeah.
Okay, she created the bomb. She came here around my time, my age in 1975. Her passion is about writing. But then after she learned about the war, she said, I want to do something that I can help the soldier. Especially she had brothers in their family, went to the military, and she said, I want them to come home safely. So what can I do to help the soldier come home safely? So she became a scientist, okay? And then she and her team create the bomb that go under, which the military
The bunker busters?
the bunker bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's her Miss Young with Anne. She's about my age, maybe 1 or 2 years older than me. And this lady down here, the little tiny lady, her name is Yao Fang. You know what she did? Did anybody know? She, the budget manager of the USS Gerald Ford,
Oh, wow.
the most power,
Yeah.
the military.
Yeah, aircraft carrier, yeah.
Okay, so why do I share you this story? Not to brag, but because I wanted to share to you that what you did was incredible. You sacrificed your life, you sacrificed your freedom, you sacrificed everything so that you can help other people around the world. Okay, and you helped Vietnam, and these are the results from that. Okay, from that. A lot, and I have many, but I just want to share a couple today only because these are very, very special people that wanted to thank America by joining, helping the military. You like that?
Yeah.
You like this?
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Happy, Paula.
Okay. And last one, this very special gentleman. This is him. The reason I bring him up because there was some propaganda about the communist guy got killed by the major of Republic of Vietnam, and that picture become iconic back then. And it's still, you probably can still see it now, but they did not tell you that he killed his family, all these people, except him because he was visiting his uncle. And he survived. He came to America with his uncle, and he became one of the top
Wow.
guy in the Navy.
Wow.
And he's the survivor of 1968, the Tet Offensive.
Wow.
Okay, so yes, we trying little by little. Since I'm too old to join the military or do anything else, so I just use my voice
Mhm.
so that these incredible veteran, Vietnam veteran, will not be forgotten. That's my message to you.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula. Guys, one other thing though. I forgot to answer one thing. You guys familiar with Admiral Zumwalt? So he was the head of naval operations while we were there. So, what an incredible story. And here's a boost we got with Agent Orange. So his son served brown water. He was a brown water captain in Vietnam in 1969 to 1970. So his son was there when I was there. And his son came back. And his son got sick. So his son ends up dying. Admiral Zumwalt's son died. So I don't know if there's a book, Father and Son. And they're both military. Now, his son died, I think I have it in there, I think it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And they were so upset, his father was so upset because Admiral Zumwalt, even though Kennedy authorized it in '62, Admiral Zumwalt is the one who signed off for widespread spraying of Agent Orange in Vietnam while his son was there. So here's Admiral Zumwalt signing off, okay, you can spray everywhere in Vietnam for Agent Orange and the other agents. His son's a brown water commander, comes back to the States, gets extremely sick, gets married, has a child. his son is severely disabled, meaning his son's son is severely disabled, and his son goes into the hospital while they're dying, of course depressed because he's Admiral Zumwalt, is saying, do you regret having to issue that order for widespread spraying in Vietnam? And the son answers that question, say, don't ever blame my father. My father did what he thought would save Vietnam veterans during the war. There was no question. You can't go back and 50 years ago and say, was that a mistake? You know, he did what he thought was the right thing, and he did. He saved thousands upon thousands of lives at the time because of the war was going on. And he, perfect example where I was, where we had a line of sight for 100 yards. That saved, I know it saved my life, saved every one of my friends' lives, you know. Yeah, some got killed. You know, we have, I don't know if I brought it with me or not, we had a rock up there, huge boulder. And my war was different, guys. I was not in the jungle, I'm on top of a mountain. It's boulders, gigantic boulders we had paths kind of squiggling through up there on Nui Ba Den. Now, she mentioned that area for a reason, because that's a sacred mountain to the Vietnamese. On top of it, there was a tomb of the Black Virgin, and was Nui Ba Den, Nui Ba Ra, right? And there's a legend that goes back thousands of years about that story, but that is a sacred mountain. So our war was different than out in the bush, right? But Admiral Zumwalt had to think, what about these guys that are traveling along the riverways, or these areas that are known like the Ho Chi Minh Trail, or along the Cambodian border where they were known to walk their munitions and supplies through, because the supplies would come through and they would actually come out to where I was. My area was huge, Tay Ninh area. Nui Ba Den was where they stored stuff, where I was. So when he made that decision, it was at the time the correct decision. He did not have all the information. He didn't know that, gee, it's going to cause everybody to get sick. You know, he had no idea. So that was his decision at the time. And yet his own son dies from Agent Orange exposure, and his grandson is massively developmentally and physically disabled. But never ever was there a time when he regretted it. And in fact, when his son got sick, I don't know if you guys know this or not, Admiral Zumwalt became, and his wife became, one of our biggest advocates. He is the one who pushed Congress. He is the one who pushed the VA. These guys need help. He didn't do it for his son. He did it for all of us. It just so happened his son got sick and died, and his grandson was born with massive physical and mental disabilities. But he did it because he realized this is the real deal. This is what's happening to these guys. This is going to continue to happen. So Admiral Zumwalt was a huge, huge proponent, and he was our biggest advocate at the time. And he is the one who kind of got everything in motion and forcing the VA to help us. So now of course, we have 19 diseases. The Gulf War guys, I think 23. Am I right on that one? 23. So why did the Gulf War guys get 23? We get 19, but why did they get any? Why? Because they went into the burn pit areas. Burn pit where all those oil fields were on fire. They were breathing that in. What is it? Toxic dioxins. It's the same as us, you know, except the VA recognizes more. And thank God Vietnam veterans were there to help push for that for the Gulf War guys, because had we not, they would have struggled for 50 years. And it was us that met them at the airport. Be proud of yourselves, guys. It was us who met them at the airport and said, we'll never let what happened to us happen to another group of veterans. Never, ever. So it was us that were there. We met them. We greeted them. We said, get to the VA. Go and check out your health. Stay on top of it, guys, and you get the benefits that you earned. And they do. And then they pass it on to the next generation. This is going on. And, you know, life lessons are learned the hard way. And we bore the brunt of it, to be honest. We were the guinea pigs, you know, and we paid the price. But at least we're helping the next generation, because we're veterans and we help our brothers and we help our sisters. That's what we do. And so, guys, I do have copies of what I was talking about. And I do have the, for women that are here, if they would like, the birth defects that the VA covers through CWVV. That's the wives of Vietnam veterans. So I have copies of all this stuff, and it is really interesting to read when you start reading about the defoliants that we used, when it was used. For me, it was I was in 3-core. 3-core happened to be the most that was ever sprayed out of I-core, 2-core, 3-core, 4-core. Where I was, we had the heaviest spraying. About 50% of all the spraying happened where I was, and Dan too. I know I was speaking to Dan earlier. So turns out he was on the next base for my rear. My rear camp was Fuloy, and Dan was at Zion. And I was telling him earlier that, yeah, they used to pull me out when I was in the rear, and they'd tell me 2 o'clock in the morning to give me a satchel of top secret stuff, and I got to take a Jeep by myself because nobody would drive with me at night. And I'd have to drive from my base to where Dan was over on his base by myself, and it's like, and you think about that, anybody who's been in Vietnam, you what? They made you do what? Yeah, I took a Jeep by myself. None of my friends, I'd say, come on, take a ride with me. Yeah, you're out of your mind, brother, you're on your own, So I'd just load it up with ammo and weapons and take that run by myself, which was, I got used to it, so. But I also have the information on AO, and again, I became really so engaged with Agent Orange from the time of the lawsuit, actually before that, when I started getting sick. So, and I've stayed on top of that, and I'll talk about it until I turn blue. It is just so important for all of us. So, other things like she mentioned, Gerald, at the end of the war, that's another whole story. I don't know if you're familiar with that, when the Paris Peace Accords, when we pulled out of Vietnam and we signed the peace agreement. Well, the peace agreement did say that we would provide air support should North Vietnam attack South Vietnam. And then when it did happen, Vietnam did call the White House and said, hey, we need air support as the Paris Peace Accords. And the answer from the White House at the time, Gerald Ford was president, he said, yeah, listen, there's a new guy in town. We have a new president, his name is Gerald Ford, and by the way, he is not going to honor the Paris Peace Accord, so you're on your own, we're not going to provide you air support. And very quickly, South Vietnam fell. That's the short story. The war, you should all know about what we went through. I'll still go around to schools and stuff. I used to be a tour guide at the New Jersey Vietnam Veteran Memorial for about 9 years. We used to get about 10,000 school kids a year, and I don't know, 2,000 or 3,000 walk-ins, and I would provide tours around the memorial. If any of you ever have not been there, go. It is our place, it is home, it is sacred. It's on 6 acres of land. There's a building that houses an incredible museum with pretty nice artifacts. Outside that's where you're going to cry. When you go outside and you walk down through that path and you go see their wall, that circular wall with all the names from the New Jerseyans who passed away, it's humbling, and it's a stark reminder, we live it every day, guys. So all the Agent Orange stuff. You guys have questions?
I have one question. I was Navy, so
yeah.
Pardon me.
Blue water.
Blue water, right? Is napalm and Agent Orange one and the same, or are they different?
No, different. It's now what I'm not sure about. Maybe the VSO knows this. So he's talking about napalm. So napalm was like Willie Peter grenades. I had Willie Peters up there. We call them Willie Peters, white phosphorus. Napalm, white phosphorus, real similar. Napalm was a mixture of, if I remember right, some type of plastics and kerosene. Yeah, kerosene and gasoline maybe. Yeah, and the gel, right. So now, interesting question, because napalm itself, maybe not so. However, the smoke and the fumes coming from it, yeah. Because that's pretty much the same as the burn pit guys. You're breathing that stuff in. Were you exposed to napalm? The minesweeper. Yeah. So you got to see the napalm. Yeah. But I believe so. If guys claim napalm, that I've never had that question. Do you know? Yeah, you're going to have a lot of research to do. But he's your VSO, guys, right there. So if you have any questions and you need any things about benefits, would you like to talk a little bit about benefits? Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah, I would. I'm going to put you on the spot, man. No, he's your VSO. I used to be a VSO, but this guy nowadays, they're so much more knowledgeable.
So I'm going to keep it quick. I don't Are you right here in Rio Grande?
Yep, I work out of John Carlson's office, right?
Okay, I see.
Cape May County asset, if you will. Our main thing is get with a VSO and have a conversation and see what you might be eligible for. I'll be interested to follow up with you and hear about your female friend with the DIC claim and stuff like that. But just spread the word. So many times we get the phone call, you know, my dad's a Vietnam vet. He's on hospice. We need help today. We need help yesterday. It's kind of late in the game, right? So spread the word. Get your friends with a VSO. We get out as much as we can when, you know, Peggy invites us in and everything. But get on the registry and get with a VSO and see what you might be eligible or have earned. That's all I got.
Good way to put it, man. Thank you.
Thank you.